2010. JFK Airport is in New York. A man is stopped at customs. He had 6 kilograms of heroin in his luggage. This man was Byron Moreno. 8 years earlier, he possessed immense power. He was an influential figure in global football. The same referee who eliminated Italy from the 2002 World Cup. And the vast difference between that whistleblowing moment and his arrest, this chasm, fundamentally alters your perception of the most contentious tournament ever staged. This is the real story of what transpired in 2002. Italy experienced a disallowed golden goal. Had it been allowed to stand, the match would have concluded immediately. Spain, in the same quarter-final, had 2 goals disallowed. Both were perfectly legitimate. Both were repeatedly confirmed upon review. The referees involved in both matches disappeared from major international football shortly thereafter, and FIFA, in a characteristic Sepp Blatter move, initiated no formal investigation. Absolutely none. The subsequent account details what can be definitively established, what remains mere suspicion, and precisely why, even after 2 decades have passed, there are no clear answers. We are going through the footage, the laws and rules book, the referee reports, the paper trails that run out of 2002 and went cold, not to deliver you a verdict, but to show you actually what was happened, call after call, and making an argument out of it. By the end, you will have all details to make your mind whether it was a football chaos, institutional pressures, or something bigger. We will begin with Italy.
The setup. Why 2002 was already strange. Before we even get to the cause, we need to quickly sketch the tournament itself. 2002 was not a normal World Cup. It was the first one in Asia, and not just one nation, but 2. South Korea and Japan, sharing the spoils, sharing the global attention. FIFA, under Sepp Blatter, had an agenda: globalize football. Not philosophically, but monetarily. Asia meant hundreds of millions of undiscovered eyeballs, new broadcast revenue, fresh, untapped money. This was an obvious land grab wearing football shirts.
And Blatter's FIFA was corrupt. Scandals, backroom deals, and allegations stacked up year after year. That was the actual culture. So when people speak of institutional pressure built into this tournament, they are not imagining something. It was there from the start. Now, this is important. South Korea were actually good. They really were. They destroyed Poland 3-0 in the group stage, playing with energy, discipline, and a press the Poles failed against. They held their own against the United States as they were in good form. Gus Hiddink transformed them into disciplined pressing units that suffocate teams in their own half. The 60,000 faces in red, screaming and waving as one, was not generated by a public address system in the stadium or by the DJ, but real support in the World Cup matches. Give them their fair share as a team. They made the knockout stages easily, yet making the knockout rounds is not the whole story. What came next? What actually happened in the knockout stage made those victories seem hollow. Something changed in the matches. The choices seemed obvious. The decisions. The timing.
South Korea versus Italy. Round of 16. This is where the tournament really changed. What happened during that match did not just break Italian hearts, but what took place left the entire world in awe. Because what happens in that match made Italy seem like a rehearsal of what happened next in the Brazil. Italy, a night of decisions that destroyed a dynasty. Italy that night walked in with perhaps the best squad that World Cup had ever seen. Buffon in net, Maldini behind on defence, Totti working the midfielder. These are not good players. These are the best players that have ever played the game. And Italy in that period did exactly what you would expect them to do. They suffocated them. They were patient. They looked as if they were going to score any time. Then something started. The first decision was a penalty whistle in the first half against Italy. Under the rules of the football, you need a clear contact, actually changing the speed and direction of the player. UEFA's observers who observed it said it was so minimal he actually was touched. 100 times you do not call on a penalty kick. But in the penalty box, Byron Moreno pointed on a penalty kick and Italy was slowly being pulled apart. The next was probably the most controversial sending off for a knockout game. In extra time, Totti went down under pressure from Lee Yong-pyo, and as a result, Moreno gave a second yellow card for simulation.
Totti was accused of trying to buy a foul, but what Lee Yong-pyo, the Korean defender directly involved in this incident, publicly confirmed later on is that Totti was not diving. However, Totti was sent off anyway. Extra time, 10 men, World Cup knockout. The last and final decision that led people questioning what was going on was Damiano Tomasi putting the ball in the back of the net to confirm Italy's golden goal victory, but the assistant referee raising the flag for offside. The goal was ruled out, but every independent post-analysis concluded that Tomasi was not offside. Wrong angle, wrong call. Should never have been given. The Italian Football Federation formally protested to FIFA. FIFA, in essence, did nothing. No investigation, no response, nothing. 3 decisions. 1 referee, Byron Moreno. A footballing superpower knocked out in the most controversial exit of all time. And yet here is the thing. If this only happened to Italy, you could almost talk yourself off it, almost. But then here is Spain, who did everything right and somehow it was still not enough. Quarterfinals, South Korea versus Spain. The referee was Egyptian official Gamal Al Gandor. A different match, a different official, no relation at all to Byron Moreno. And yet you would be forgiven for just thinking again that you were watching the same film twice. 2 goals disallowed. 2. Both under circumstances which the football historians are still having nightmares even as of now, some 20 years later. The first was a Fernando Morientes header, disallowed because the ball had apparently gone across the byline before the cross had come in. Spain insisted that it had not fully crossed. And here is the thing again, the replay evidence did not settle the debate. You could watch the same replay again and again and you would have reasonable football fans having different conclusions. And again, when you have that much ambiguity, that should tell you something. But the second one, this is the one nobody can let go of. Joaquin's cross. Shot, caught from multiple angles, from cameras, from positions, seemed to have wholly crossed the goal line before it was cleared. But the play was ruled as not a goal. There were replays, lots of replays, as the world kept confirming that ball did go over the goal line. No interpretation was needed, no split-second interpretation. It was one of the tournament's most replayed calls. It remains to be, due to the world trying to find a right answer. Spanish coach Iñaki Saiz, in post-match, angrily said Spain did go over the line to advance in response to the ball not being a goal. The Spanish Football Federation later filed a formal complaint to FIFA, just as the Italians had weeks earlier, and it, like that, was lost in the vast bureaucracy that is FIFA. Moving away from these 2 matches for a moment though, this is where the story shifts. Byron Moreno never officiated another major international assignment after 2002. Neither did Gamal Al Gandor. 2 referees, 2 separate controversial matches involving South Korea, 2 European teams eliminated in a suspect manner, and FIFA offered no explanation. Surely you do not believe in the conspiracy theory. Italy, the Spanish, protests everywhere, but FIFA did not say anything.
it was no longer considered coincidence to some of the people working in football. Some people started asking about Byron Moreno. Who is he really? And what about his life after all that?
FIFA, money, and the question nobody could prove. For that, do not talk about the referee and start talking about FIFA, which is in the hand of football mafia. Football is a business for them, and in 2002, they had a plan. The 2002 World Cup was the first ever held in Asia, not a small thing. FIFA had tried for years to crack that market open. Billions of new potential viewers.
Huge broadcast deals, gargantuan sponsorship packages, merchandising flowing across a continent that had never hosted the thing. The commercial incentive was massive, and a successful Asian co-hosting was not just good for football, it was good for FIFA's books in a way that, frankly, is hard to overstate. And when South Korea started winning, that became the single most commercially valuable storyline in the entire tournament.
Was Sepp Blatter sitting in a dark back room ringing up referees instructing them to make questionable calls? There is no evidence of that, and that is not the argument here. The argument is far more subtle, yet frankly more disturbing than a simple conspiracy. FIFA under Blatter had been documented to have been built on a foundation of opacity, favoritism, and near zero accountability. Multiple investigations exposed a pervasive culture in which pressure could be applied in informal channels, in which no one needed to issue a direct order.
That is how institutions such as that work. Nobody has to say anything out loud. In 2002, the referees committee inside FIFA chose the officials for each match and did not involve any outside force to look over what was happening behind the FIFA doors. What everyone must keep in mind is that neither Moreno nor Algandor was ever punished. They were not suspended or even given public notification stating that they had wrongly treated the 2002 World Cup. FIFA overlooked all the events that occurred during the 2002 World Cup without saying anything.
In all honesty, the biggest flaw with this argument relates to the fact that all referees in big tournaments buckle under pressure all the time and are often not punished. People make mistakes in all professions, in all situations, and sometimes for a referee, these can decide matches. Also, some teams are simply meant to lose because one of the teams is much better than the other. Teams that are meant to lose have many fans who sometimes do not realise how their team can be much weaker than another.
One referee that made many fans and football enthusiasts angry is English referee Graham Poll. Not one catastrophic error, a sequence of them, each one tilting the same direction, each one preserving the same outcome, across matches that defined the entire tournament. No document has ever surfaced proving a fix. What we have is a pattern of decisions, an institutional structure that let influence move quietly, and a silence from FIFA that nobody in authority ever chose to break. And then, years after the final whistle, Byron Moreno's name appeared in the news again, and this time it had nothing to do with football. After the whistle, Byron Moreno, the arrest, and what the legacy tells us. September 2010. 8 years after those matches, Byron Moreno was walking through JFK Airport when customs officials pulled him aside. What they found was strapped to his body, hidden under his clothes, approximately 6 kilograms of heroin. Arrested, convicted, sentenced to 2.5 years in federal prison. And that is where it gets complicated, because people immediately started connecting dots that may or may not actually connect. So let me be precise. His drug conviction does not retroactively prove his 2002 decisions were bought.
No document, no testimony, no wire transfer ties his refereeing to any corrupt payment. None. Full stop. But here is what it does prove. Byron Moreno was a man willing to break the law when he thought the personal gain was worth it. Character evidence, factually established, and you are absolutely entitled to weigh it when you think about who was holding that whistle in day job. History is not a courtroom. We get to ask the question. Now, and this gets lost far too easily, South Korea's run to the semi-finals is one of the most remarkable achievements in the history of Asian football. Those players ran themselves hollow. They believed when the entire world had written them off. Park Ji-sung, Hong Myung-bo, An Jung-hwan, those men were exceptional. No controversy touches that. The tragic part is that the controversy has made it almost impossible to actually honour what they built, because South Korea 2002 inevitably comes with an asterisk even before you finish the sentence. That is what happens when refereeing collapses dramatically at the worst moments, and nobody in authority ever offers an explanation. It casts a poison of doubt on the achievement, even for the team that benefited, and that is unfair to them. So, was the 2002 World Cup rigged for South Korea? The evidence does not prove a unified conspiracy. There is no smoking gun, no confession, nothing to prove it was organised. But the evidence, plainly and without exaggeration, proves that the refereeing was terrible, happened repeatedly and at the worst moments, and every decision pushed in the same direction. The institution responsible for those referees never investigated what happened, never sanctioned anyone, and never explained why it happened. It decided to remain silent, and it remained perfectly silent. Silence from the biggest, most powerful organisation in the world's biggest sport is an answer itself. That silence is the true story of 2002. Not the goals, the flags, or even the whistles. The whistles ended games. The silence made sure nobody ever had to answer for them. That is Italy sorted. One referee, 3 decisions, end of a tournament campaign. Again, it is tempting to cite bad luck here. One isolated night, one isolated referee, a single bad performance. Then move on. The key separating 2002 from every other referee controversy in the World Cup is it then again. Different match, different referee, different country, same direction. The Spain evidence, and I want to be honest about this early, is even harder to argue with. Stick with me on this one. Here is where it all lands. Every error in both Italy and Spain's matches was not a close call. Rulebook clear on replay. Every single one broke the same way. The referee in the centre of the Italy game was later convicted of drug trafficking, and that does not clear his name on what happened in 2002, but it says something about FIFA giving him the biggest match on earth. FIFA himself had mammoth financial reasons to keep a host state in a competition throughout the entire thing under Sepp Blatter, and zero reason of asking any hard questions afterwards. Does any of that prove a fix? No. What it proves is that the conditions were correct, the decisions were inept, and no one with any power ever tried to seriously explain them. Do what you will with that. And if that makes you want to pull up the footage yourself, perfect. That is the entire point. Subscribe, as the next one goes much deeper. 2010. Different continent, different officials, and a pattern that makes 2002 look like a rehearsal. One question as you scroll away from this: was 2002 the exceptional one, or the new template. See you there.